We bring in our next guest on the show today to talk some boys basketball, and that is going to be Joe Jackson, the head coach of the Maize South High School basketball team. And Joe, appreciate you coming on the show. For you, like as we get into the month of February, like what's the mentality for you and the team, and just kind of the focus at this time of the season?
Well, Cole, first of all, thanks for having us on today, and I always enjoy getting the chance to talk basketball. But definitely, as we approach February, I learned this a long time ago. I've been very fortunate in my career to coach under two different Hall of Fame coaches, and Keith Riley up in Hill City, Kansas, was my first mentor coaching wise, and Coach Riley always set it as a goal to go undefeated in February. We want to be playing our best basketball, towards the end of the season, and I don't know how realistic that is. We've got a pretty tough schedule ahead of us still in February, but we definitely want to be playing our best basketball, and that's always a goal. We want to try to win all of our games in February and to have things trending in the right direction, headed into sub-state and the postseason and everything.
You mentioned your time with Keith Riley at Hill City, and like you said, like Hall of Famer, one of the best, if not the best, in high school basketball, and even in the entire state. Like, what was it like for you, especially like that first year, just knowing you're gonna be with him on the staff?
Well, I was really excited about it. He was kind of a rival with my dad for years. They coached against each other for a lot of years, and Coach Riley always gave me a hard time when I was in seventh and eighth grade, trying to get me to come play for him. And he actually had me talked into it. Mom and Dad didn't think that was a great idea, but anyway, he was unbelievable to work under. When I first applied to student teach there, he sat down with me, and we got in his truck and went down to Casey's to grab a drink or whatever, grab a fountain drink, and he basically just laid down some of his expectations, and one of his biggest ones, the biggest one that stands out to me, is he said, Joe, he said, when you get into coaching, I'm going to tell you right now, you have got to have high expectations. He said, you're going if you don't have high expectations for the student athletes we're working with, he goes, you're not going to get a lot out of your kids. So you've got to set your standards high, and then you got to stay true to those. And that has really been something that I've tried to hang my hat on as I moved on from Hill City to Wichita East. And I got to be an assistant under another legendary coach in Ron Allen, and Coach Allen was absolutely amazing too. And I tried to take things from both Coach Riley and Coach Allen, and kind of mesh those to have kind of my own style, I guess, when it comes to coaching. And we've been fortunate to have a little success over the years, but that's one of the biggest things that stands out to me is just instilling those high expectations and trying to keep everybody accountable to those.
What was a Keith Riley practice like? What was the structure?
Coach Riley's practices were very detailed. They were very structured. I would basically, at that time, I was just out of college. In fact, I was still student teaching when my first year with him there. So I was still in college, probably 22 years old, starting off. And so I was young and single. His wife they would have me over for dinner almost every night. And he still gives me a hard time that his wife doesn't cook as good since I've left, and everything. But he gives me a hard time about that. But Mariel was amazing, but we would go over and typically, she would cook dinner for us. We would sit down, we'd go down to his office and we'd plan practice together. And, Coach Riley was, he would have his notebook. He would go write down, he would write down the list of things that we needed to work on for practice. Then he'd typically start on a whole separate sheet of paper and he'd organize it and put times on it and everything else. And he was particular enough that if he made a mistake writing something on the practice plan, and he was still doing it pen and paper, he would throw the paper away and completely rewrite it again. He was very detail oriented. He wanted things to be perfect. He wanted them to be a certain way. I've always done our practice plans on the computer and everything, so it's a little easier, I guess, for me. When I make a mistake, I can go back and change that and everything. But that's just his personality, his mindset. He wants things to be done a certain way. I think one of the strengths in Coach Riley is that he has always found a way to adapt to his team's strengths. And I think there are a lot of coaches out there that, they feel like, well, this is what we do. This is our system. We're going to do this consistently year in and year out. And I feel like he is always like he's a lifelong learner. He's a perfect example of that. And he's always looking for new things and new ways to improve, and he's tweaking things to play to their strengths and everything else. And I just feel like he's done a masterful job of that. Him and I still talk, once a week or so and everything on the phone. And it's still exciting to me, to he's still, even though he's older now, he's got 800 wins and everything like that. He's still, his mind's still sharp, and he's still a lot of fun, lot of fun to talk to, a lot of fun to be around. He'll give you a hard time, just like, he's like a teenager basically at times. So anyway, he's a lot of fun.
How much did that, like you mentioned, your time under, Allen with that Wichita East, like, did you feel like just ready to guide the Wichita East program, the success that you had, and obviously now in year 6 at Maize South, but how ready did you feel to be a head coach?
That's one of the things I feel like, and maybe this is good advice for, young assistant coaches and everything, but I felt like Coach Riley had me really prepared to be a head coach. And then, I think working 3 years under Coach Allen, that was one of Coach Allen's questions when I interviewed at Wichita East was, he said, do you have aspirations of being a head coach? And I told Coach Allen this, and I meant it 100%. I said, Coach Allen, I absolutely would love to be a head coach someday, but I said, you don't have to. I said, I'm a very loyal person. I'm not going to step on your toes or anybody else's. I'm fully aware, you're the head coach, and I'm going to do whatever I can do to be the best assistant that I can be, and to support you, and to make sure that, I'm supportive in your voice and your vision with everything we're doing with the team. And so I really tried to hold true to that, every single day. And it was awesome because I got to go to Coach Allen's office during lunch at East, and so we ate lunch together every single day. And we got to, we talked a lot of basketball, but we talked a lot of life too and everything. And I just really felt like, Coach Riley absolutely had me ready to be a head coach. And then I learned, even more from Coach Allen as well. I mean, they were two totally different styles of coaches, and I definitely pulled a lot of really great knowledge from both of those guys. And I couldn't ask for a better opportunity as a young head coach. I feel like the good Lord really blessed me and who I got to work under. And both of those men were truly impactful for me. I'm very thankful for that opportunity that I received every day. When Coach Allen retired, he actually went to bat for me to be the next head coach at East. And I wasn't quite 30 years old at that point. They always said there was an unwritten rule in the city. You had to be 30 years old to be a head coach. I think I was 29 at that time, but I ended up being 30 before coaching my first game. But when I got hired there, I was 29. Coach Allen had went to bat for me, and I was just truly humbled that that somebody of his stature would go to bat for just a small town kid like me and everything, to be coaching at the biggest high school in Kansas. And everything worked out. We were able to have some success there over the years, but none of that success would have happened without, number one, a lot of great players, but number two, being able to learn, how to coach the game through guys like Coach Riley and Coach Allen.
Talking with Joe Jackson, head coach of the Maize South boys basketball team. Yeah, you talk about Wichita East and the success you had. How much fun was that, just continuing to build upon what Allen did, and the 4 straight years at the state tournament and then the state title in 2015? Like, how much fun was it there at East during that stretch?
We had an absolute blast, and I really fell in love with East High. My first year there, my first 3 years I was coaching freshman basketball. I was an assistant for the varsity. One of the really cool things, we had a really a talented group of kids. My first year as an assistant, we had a junior point guard named Jalen Williams, and this was really cool. Just on Tuesday night, I actually got to coach against Jalen. Jalen's now the head coach at campus,
Nice.
and so that was such a special moment for me to get to coach against a former player. And great, I was an assistant at that time. I wasn't Jalen's head coach, but that was such a cool opportunity. Anytime you get a chance to coach against former players, I feel like that's incredible. Had a similar experience. Zach Bush, who had played at Wichita State, was on the Final Four team. Zach coached with us here at Maize South for a year, and he's now the head coach at Maize High. So we coached against each other earlier this year. So just opportunities like that are really special, and it's kind of weird competing against people you really care about
Yeah.
too. Anyway, back to your question, I guess. I mean, we had an absolute blast at East. We had a lot of great kids, a lot of great people supported our program. We tried to do things the right way. We tried to make sure our guys were, respectful in classes and conducting themselves the right way. I always feel like there's a correlation with that. The way you conduct yourself off the court, is going to carry over to who we are on the court as well. I had some very talented freshman teams, some great kids there. My last year as a freshman coach, it made it really special because the group I had my last year as a freshman coach, they were seniors the year we won state, and so that was a really cool experience getting to coach them at the freshman level, and then seeing them through through JV basketball, through varsity basketball, and by the time they were seniors, we had won a state title together and everything. And so that was truly special. We were close to winning it three straight years there. And
Yeah.
in 2014 we took third. We got beat at the buzzer in the semi. We missed a shot at the buzzer that would have put it in overtime in the semifinal against Blue Valley North that year. That was 2014. We won it in 2015. 2016, we were really good again. Xavier Kelly, Mark Hartley were seniors that year. Raymond O'Day. We had a really solid junior group as well, and Xavier had a ton of success in football. He had missed a few games in the middle of the season there because he went to play in the Army All-American Bowl in Texas and everything, and so we dropped a couple games in the middle of the season there, but we made a run there late in the year. And Shawnee Mission North ended up winning it all with the Weathers twins, and they beat us by 3, at state right there. So we were right there on to I think they won the state title game by 23, and everything. So we were close there 3 different years. We got it done one year, and I just have a ton of memories. Over Christmas break, my wife and I were in the airport. We actually ran into Xavier Kelly in the airport, and I still stay in touch with a lot of those guys. We still text a lot, but that was really cool just running into Xavier, in the airport and everything. And we were early for our flight. We got to talk for about 45 minutes before we both flew out and everything. So that was really cool
Nice.
too. So,
Well, you mentioned now, with the coaching connection with Maize, but what is that like? I always like to get like the inner looks and perspective of like rivalries throughout the states. Like, what is that? How much fun, exciting, but also the intensity of a rivalry between Maize South and Maize.
it's definitely an intense rivalry. There's definitely no love lost there. Our district, in a lot of ways we are one Maize. That's kind of our district motto. We want to be one district unified together, but I feel like I wasn't here, when this when Maize High split and Maize South came into existence, but there's definitely some hate there between the schools athletically and everything. I've got a tremendous amount of respect for Coach Grill. We had some battles over the years, and that was a whole lot of fun. And just with Zach being there now, it's a whole different dynamic because Zach and I mean, we've known each other for a long, long time. In fact, when Zach was a senior at Wichita State, he actually sat down with me. We went out to lunch together and talked about him possibly getting into coaching. And then, ran a few years later, he ends up coming to work with us and everything. And he was an unbelievable assistant as well. He's obviously he's going to be very, very successful. In fact, they're in the league. They're in the lead in the league right now in AVCTL Division One. So they've been playing good ball. He's doing a great job. It just is really strange when you're coaching against people that you've either coached or worked with.
I bet.
It's a weird feeling because you're supposed to go out and we're both very competitive people and we're trying to win, but on the other side of that, it's weird seeing somebody you really care about on the other side of that, and you're trying to beat each other's brains in and everything. And then, at the end of the day, you love them too, and so, and it's also really unique because Dr. Chris Botts is the principal at Maize High. And he's been battling cancer for a while now and everything. But when I was working on my master's degree, I got my master's in school leadership years ago, so I could go become a principal if I ever decide to do that down the road someday. But Dr. Botts was one of my professors when I was working on my master's class. He actually wrote a recommendation for me when I applied for a job in the district, and then my first year here, I actually taught one block a day at Maize High, even though I taught the rest of the day at Maize South and was coaching here at Maize South and everything. But I absolutely adore Dr. Botts. I love that guy. He was my favorite professor throughout my entire master's program. He was absolutely incredible, and so I've got a lot of love for him too. And so it makes things interesting. Our fans definitely don't care for each other much, and our student sections hate each other, and I mean they talk crazy and everything else in the games, and so it definitely gets pretty intense. And I think there's probably some of our players that probably feel that way too, but I've got a ton of respect for Dr. Botts and for Coach Bush especially, it makes the rivalry really a lot of fun.
Very exciting. Hey, Coach, appreciate the time and best of luck the rest of the season.
Okay, thank you, Cole. I appreciate you. Thanks for having us on.
That is Joe Jackson, head coach of the Maize South boys basketball team. We'll have more of the show right after this.